like a Hellcat. Like a Hellcat.
Ciao ragazzi, welcome to the show. As you can see, the cat is away, so the mouse will play. I'm your host tonight, Richard Carmen. Thank you for joining us once again. We're part of the World Football Index. I am not alone in this one. I'm going to bring in my guest right away here. Our guest says he's a television producer and he's author of the book GOLAZZO, The Football Italia Years. Please welcome to the show, Jonathan Grade. How are we doing, sir?
I'm very well. How are you?
I am doing quite well. Yeah, I'm excited. No Frank tonight, which is fine. He's feeling a little under the weather, but I have a wonderful guest that I'm excited to have on the show here. How's the weather in London? You're from London. You're in London, right?
I am in London. The weather is classic December in London. Grey, cold, wet, really cold, and very dark. But we have been assured we're getting snow this week, so that'll be something to look forward to.
Well, you guys are going to get snow before we are, it seems like, because it's cold here, but it has the precipitation. It's been mostly rainy here. It feels like it's London almost. It's raining all the time here. So
always
raining. Always raining here. So anyway, welcome to the show. Welcome to SerieA Sitdown. So yeah, the reason we have you on, we're excited about this because you authored a book called, we just mentioned, GOLAZZO, The Football Italia Years, talking about Calcio in the 90s, and in particular, Channel 4. They used to air their the Calcio, I believe, every Sunday nights there on Channel 4, or every Sunday afternoon, I should say.
Every Sunday afternoon. Yeah, we just tell you a little bit about the show. We had a live game every Sunday afternoon, and we had a show on a Saturday morning on Channel 4 called Gazzetta, which was a roundup of the previous week's action. It was like a magazine-style show. We had features. We had a presenter based out there. We had Gaza back then. We had all sorts, and it was an amazing time. And the show just took off from people having no idea about Italian football, thinking it was potentially dull, negative. And our first game was a 3-3 draw between Sampdoria and Lazio in '92. And from that moment, the whole thing took off massively in the UK.
Wow. So tell me about this book. Is amazing. And I for those who are listening, please, you should get this book, because if you remember watching Calcio in the 90s, this will bring back a lot of memories, and this is story in particular. So tell me, what got you to write this book? I mean, obviously you had that fantastic experience, with Channel 4 and getting to watch those tapes and all that stuff. So tell us what got you into what made you want to write this book.
Well, it's a very interesting story. There's no particular thing, but our commentator was a guy by the name of Peter Brackley, who was a very famous commentator in the UK, and he called all our matches, and he was just our number one commentator, and he'd do every week. And basically, he actually sadly passed away 2 years ago, and I went to his funeral, and I saw all sorts of people from the production, from all the programs he worked on over the years, and I thought it would be nice to write a book about it. I think no one's really talked about these 10 years we were on air. It's such an iconic show. Wow. We also had Kenneth Wolstenholme, who was the voice of the 1966 World Cup final. We brought him out of retirement to work on the show. So it sort of felt like it had been nearly 20 years, but no one had no one had sort of closed that chapter or not, just reflected on it. And I'm lucky enough to have a lot of the knowledge of the league from that time. And I just sat there and I thought, you know what, it'd be nice to pay tribute to these guys, but also to take things back to a really iconic time in Serie A. And obviously, with the way of the world nowadays, it's sort of quite a nostalgic, happy book to sort of read about.
Yeah, and without getting too much into the book or anything like that, but you said how you really hadn't seen or exposed too much to Calcio until you started looking at these tapes and stuff, and you fell in love with the sport. That time in particular was amazing. So what is it like for you? Because I know Gaza Mania was big in the early '90s. What about it that drew you to the sport and made you want to get more and more each week?
Well, I've always been a big soccer / football fan, whatever you want to call it. I watched English football when I was young. I watched all the games. We didn't get that much overseas football back then, and all I could see back then was a procession of English players heading off for the big buck in Italy, and it was the greatest league. There was all the money, and they were all following the move out there. And I thought, you know what, I really don't like this, because we're losing all our talent and we're not seeing our best players. So anyway, I didn't get off the best footing with Calcio as it was back then. But then I did some work experience for the production company Chrysalis, and they introduced me to Italian football, and I looked through all the results from the previous season. Couldn't believe Milan had gone unbeaten. The final day of the 91-92 season, they were 2-1 down at halftime at Foggia and turned it around to win 8-2. And it was just, amazing. This is not boring. This is amazing football. And so then I got into it. Then I actually only did a month's work experience with them. I traveled to Europe. I did a diploma in France. And I came back the following summer. And I spoke to the same company. I said, any chance of doing some work experience? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we're great. Getting ready for the new season. And then we went out for dinner before the season, asked for a job, and they gave me one. I had no television experience. And from that moment, I was hooked on SerieA.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And it's funny because one of the things we say over and over on the show is that it's not your father's Serie A anymore, because nowadays there's so much scoring in Serie A, but also back in that day it was as well. And it's always been, obviously, catenaccio is something that sticks with many people, especially outside of Italy. So anytime they talk about Serie A, they always want to say, "Oh, it's boring, it's slow, no goals." It's like, no, it's far from it. You need to open your eyes and watch the game. It's quite entertaining, and it has gone through ebbs and flows. It had the high scoring period and then went down to very catenaccio-like, and now it's back to the scoring ways. When you were writing this book, and obviously you had some memories and stuff that you wanted to elaborate on. But was there anything in particular, or any stories in particular that jumped out at you that when you were writing, you were like, "Oh my goodness, I forgot about this," and it kind of like brought back memories that you completely forgot about?
Yeah. Well, I'm very lucky that I remember quite a lot of it, but there were two incidents I wanted to sort of bring back in the public eye in this book. The first was the Juventus-Inter match in '98, which was the Scudetto showdown. And to anyone that wasn't aware, Juventus and Inter were going hammer and tongs for the Scudetto. Inter had the original Ronaldo.
Yep.
He had he was just the most complete striker. His pace was frightening.
Yeah.
And Juventus had Del Piero and Inzaghi and Zidane and all of that. They're amazing side as well. And they met in Turin. I think Juventus had a 1 or 2 point lead at top. It was 4 games to go when they met, and Del Piero scored in the first half. It was 1-0 at half time, and we waited for second half. Second half, Ronaldo got body checked by Mark Giuliano.
Yep.
No penalty. Juventus went down the other end. Del Piero went over somewhat theatrically. The referee gave a penalty. All hell broke loose, and there were fights in Parliament the next day.
Yep.
Literally punch-ups in Parliament. It's unbelievable. And that sort of was the prelude to what eventually would happen in Calciopoli with Juventus, that there was always a suspicion that, Juventus had favours, blah, 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 blah. And actually that season, when you read about that season in the book, it's unbelievable, because that season, these incidents happened all in one season. Juventus played Udinese. Udinese nearly went a goal up. Oliver Bierhoff, I think it was, lobbed the keeper, was about 2 feet over the line. They said no VAR, no goal.
Yep.
Juventus played Empoli away. 1-0 up. Empoli had a header over the line. Goal not given. Juventus played Lazio. Late on, handball, a crucial game. Lazio were on an unbelievable run. Handball from, I think it was Giuliano again, not given. And then the Inter carnage. I described it in the book as the most controversial 15 seconds in the history of Italian football. And I honestly can't think of anything that can come. The whole, it was almost like Inter had their suspicions about what went on, and it exploded in 15 seconds. And the Inter coach, Gigi Simone, was sent off. I mean, it was absolute bedlam.
Yeah, I remember that game in particular because we were actually in the summertime when coronavirus first started. We and Calcio wasn't around. We tried to stream some of the old games, and that was one of the games we tried to stream unsuccessfully, mind you. YouTube took it down, but we tried to watch that with the fans, and that game was just an iconic game, like as you mentioned, and tensions were super high. A lot was on the line, and obviously no VAR around and controversial calls. Things are going to get a little testy, So. But there's, like you mentioned, the 90s had so many teams. I mean, just work in that kind of era. You mentioned Milan having such that unbeaten run. They had great team early 90s and the middle 90s as well. Gaza coming over with Lazio. You had Sampdoria, who's really good. Obviously Juventus had some big name players like Baggio and Vialli. It was an amazing experience. I mean, amazing time to be watching those tapes, because back then, like you said, the UK media had never seen this kind of stuff before, and to be able to cut it all together, your firsthand seeing all these highlights week in and week out. I mean, that's got to be amazing experience for you.
It was. I mean, on a live day, we'd obviously show up 2 or 3 hours before we were on air, and do the whole rehearsal and everything. And then we'd have our game, and then there was a program where we got all our other action from all the highlights of the other matches called Novantesimo Minuto, the 90th minute. It's an Italian show, and we recorded it off Rai TV, and basically it was a roundup. It's about half hour, 40 minutes, but it was 3 minutes of each match that had been played that day, and that's where we got all our footage from. And oh my God, it's just so much crazy stuff went on. It was mad. There was one incident in 2001 when Inter fans actually got into the San Siro a Vespa and threw it from the 3rd tier down to the 2nd tier. And you think,
how did that happen?
Why would anyone want to get a Vespa into the San Siro to start?
Why would you want to throw it over?
And why would you want to throw it over? I mean, it is astonishing.
Yeah,
astonishing.
It's the crowds back in the day were something special for sure, and with all those great teams, and you mentioned all these great teams, and SerieA during that time period, they had 13 European trophies, 6 world record transfers, 6 Ballon d'Or winners, iconic players from Azzurri to Zidane. I mean, you can name them; they were in that league. Before we get into the current Calcio, was there a particular team that you like more than any other? I mean, obviously there's some English players in the league that you were following very closely. Did you have a team that of any of the teams that you followed more than others, or was just pretty much you just enjoyed watching Calcio?
Oh, the cat's out of the bag now, isn't it? Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
I would have to say my favorite team to watch was that Juventus side under Marcello Lippi, which that first season he went to Italy. They hadn't won the league in a decade, and he transformed the club from top to bottom. And that side when they had up front, they had Vialli, Ravanelli, Baggio, and a certain young lad by the name of Del Piero. In fact,
I've heard of him.
Just to make you feel really old, 1994, 26 years ago, on this day, well, it is here, the 3rd of December, you may recall a certain game between Juventus and Fiorentina when Del Piero scored a volley
Yeah.
One of the last kicks of the game. That was 26 years ago today.
Oh my goodness, 26
know,
years ago.
sorry,
Oh,
and that goal launched his career, and he became, after that season, he sort of gone from a youth team player to like a regular fixture in that side. And Juventus had Baggio, and they saw Del Piero as the heir apparent, and Baggio was offered an extended contract on half what he was on, wage-wise, and he said no. And they almost drove him out. And then he went to AC Milan, and the next year AC Milan won the league. But then after that point, Juventus won back-to-back under Lippi, back-to-back titles. And the year after that, Del Piero got that awful injury against Udinese, which ruled him out for almost a year, and they imploded.
Wow. Yeah, that's some iconic teams, and then the Juventus team was quite strong. Obviously, winning back-to-back titles like that. Such amount of talent on that team. It was just ridiculous. Unreal, really. So before we get into the Calcio, where can our followers find your book if they were interested in getting the book?
Right, it's on Amazon. It's called GOLAZZO: The Football Italia Years. You just type in GOLAZZO and it comes up. It's it's on in English pounds for $9.99, and it's available in the Kindle store for $7.99, and it has gone on sale for the past 2 weeks, and it's doing well. But it's a very good Christmas present.
I would concur to that, because I actually got a copy myself, and I'm enjoying the read. I can't wait to finish this book. It's such fun reading for sure. Definitely brings me back to that time period and watching and remembering some of that Calcio that I remember growing up with. So beautiful stuff there. And we'll get you a plug-in before we get you off on the show later. But this is the SerieA Sitdown, so we're going to get to some of the more recent games. But I think we're going to start off with the Champions League games, because there were some interesting games in terms of the SerieA clubs, and we'll start with today's Wednesday. So Tuesday, we're going to start with the Tuesday games. First, we're going to start with Inter Milan on the road at Mönchengladbach. That game was a sensational game, definitely a high-scoring one. Scoring started first in the 17th minute through Matteo Darmian, in the 17th, and then Plié got a goal in the 45th stoppage time in the first half. Romelu Lukaku would get a goal in the 64th minute and get a brace in the 73rd, and then Plié would get his brace in the 75th. Inter would hold on to win 3-2. That was a big result for Inter in that game. They've been struggling in the Champions League. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Obviously, Gladbach got their number earlier. They lost 2 games to Real Madrid. They were struggling. They needed this win, didn't they?
Oh God, 100%. I mean, Inter were teetering on the brink. That game last night, I saw it. I was working on it, and it was absolutely crazy. Inter started so well, and they had a great chance. I think Martinez had a chance to make it 2-0. Then Mönchengladbach came back into it, got level for half-time, as you said. And then at 3-1, it looked game over. And then they gave away a sloppy goal. Yeah. And then with about 5 minutes to go, was a hugely contentious VAR moment when player had a shot from the edge of the box, which left Handanovic unsighted. And it transpired that the player in his line of vision, Embolo, I think it was, had basically flicked the ball. I mean, there was no way the keeper could see it. So the right decision was eventually made, but pre-VAR, Inter would have been out of Europe. And that could be a huge call in the context of the group, because that group is astonishing, because all 4 teams could go through and all 4 teams could still go out. And goes to, there's 1 week to go, one final match day. And I think Inter have got, it will come back to me, Shakhtar, San Siro. And it's Mönchengladbach and Real need a draw, but it's in Madrid, and I don't think anyone could call it, honestly.
Yeah. It's certainly crazy, because Shakhtar's got 2 wins against Real Madrid now, and Gladbach's gotten wins. I mean, like I said, anybody can win it, and the chances are very, Inter needs to show up, because they've been very inconsistent this season. We'll get into them in the regular season as well, but they've been very inconsistent. Their team on paper probably should be one of the 2 best teams in this group. Now, obviously, the other team that should be one of the best teams, Real Madrid, they're also struggling as well. So really seeing, Shakhtar, doing well. Obviously, Gladbach is doing really well in the Champions League as opposed to the Bundesliga. So they had some work to do, and they made up for it, I think, in that game. Another team that needed to get a good result was Atalanta. They were our host team against Midtjylland. Midtjylland did get the goal scoring started early by Alexander Schultz in the 13th minute, and that's not a good sign for Atalanta. They've been struggling to keep goals out this season and been struggling to score goals, which is odd to say because they've been such a offensive juggernaut in the last couple of years. But they did get it. They did get a late one through Christian Romero. They get a 1-1 draw, and it ended up being a good result for them. Liverpool did their job that they had to do against Ajax, 1-0. So Atalanta are still very much in their hands. They got a big game against Ajax in the last match day. The winner takes all to get out of this group. What are the chances do you give Atalanta to get out of this group here now with just one game left against a pretty decent Ajax squad?
I think they've got their work cut out. I'd love them to go through. I think they're an incredible story. I mean, what they've achieved on absolutely a minuscule budget compared to the top clubs in Europe is to get to the quarterfinals and then to be back in. And I think that is going to be a hard game, but Atalanta only need a draw. They don't have to win the game. So a draw will suffice for them. I think you can flip a coin, honestly. I think they're very strong away. I mean, they went to Liverpool and won. I mean, they're just they seem this year to be not have the consistency they had last year, but they seem capable of pulling off great victories when you don't expect it. No one expected them to win Liverpool. I know Liverpool were slightly weakened, but whatever team Liverpool puts out is a very strong side,
especially at home.
And I think they should have no fear. I mean, I don't really think they've got anything to lose because they go out. But I think they've got a chance. But I think a draw, I don't see them winning there. I'll probably make it look ridiculous now when they win 5-0 or something. But I think it's going to be either a draw or an Ajax win, and I think it's going to be sort of either a 1-1 or a 2-1. I think it's going to be very tight.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be tight. It's going to be difficult to get a win, but like you said, they're very capable of pulling a 5-0 victory out of their pocket. The inconsistency that they've had this year, at least last year they would score goals. They would give up occasional goal, but they could at times, especially towards the end of the season, they found ways to really lock down defensively and keep teams out. They became very defensively stout towards the end of the season, but this year they can't stop anybody. They can barely score. It's been very inconsistent at times. At times you see the flashes of the brilliance, and then it goes back to being inconsistent. The other blue and black team in the league has the same issues. They're very talented as well, and they're having their problems. But good points for Atalanta. They're still in the fight. Like I said, with one match to go, you couldn't ask for more. A draw gets them through. They don't have to win. So things are looking good for them. A team with a manager who's probably arguably having the manager of the season so far. Excuse me, I'm talking about Simone Inzaghi and his Lazio squad. They obviously they had the shock win of the first match day against Dortmund, or second match day, whatever. It was the first time they played. They won 3-1, and so many wondered, with them doing so well, how would they do against Dortmund again? Dortmund did get the goal scoring started early in the first half. 44th minute, Rafael Guerrero makes a 1-0. But Lazio would get a tie it up in the 67th minute through a penalty. Immobile would convert it as he always does. 1-1. Lazio would get the draw on that one. The job that Simone Inzaghi has been doing, not many people gave them a chance, Lazio, to get out of their group. And right now they're sitting very pretty. I don't know if they've guaranteed the progression to the knockout stage with that draw, but they're in a great place right now. They're doing what they're decent in the league. They're doing really well in Champions League. I mean, Simone Inzaghi, with what he's had to go through with the COVID cases and injuries and everything, and the team still producing on game day, it's been a magical job by him so far.
He's done phenomenally well. I mean, you just look. I mean, before this season, he's come pretty close to getting a league title. I mean, they've been phenomenal. Regarding tonight's game, that was a phenomenal result for them because it now means they just need a draw at home to Bruges, which will get them through. I don't think many people thought they'd get anything in Dortmund, and they are so strong at home. So to pick up 4 points from those 2 games is quite an effort by them.
Yeah. No, absolutely brilliant by them. And then a team that, to round out the Champions League teams, I should say, Juventus, they've been struggling over the last few games, especially the last game against Ferencvaros, where everyone thought they were going to steamroll them at home, and they did not. They eked out a 2-1 victory. This time they would go against one of the better Ukrainian teams in Dynamo Kiev. But this time, unlike last game, they found their goal-scoring ways. Federico Chiesa opened the scoring in the 21st minute. Cristiano Ronaldo scores, as he always does, in the 57th minute. And then Alvaro Morata, who's been hot lately, he scored in the 66th minute. Juventus take all 3 points. Looks like it. Well, them and Barcelona were always going to be the favorites in that group, and they found ways, both of them, to progress to the next stage. Are you convinced that this game was just a one-off, or was this Juventus finally starting to turn the corner in terms of their goal-scoring ways and trying to be more attractive? Because they've been very inconsistent.
I cannot decide how the season's going to go for Juventus.
They're like Jekyll and Hyde.
They are unbelievable. I mean, they struggled against Benevento. Juventus in past years would win in Benevento. They beat Verona at home comfortably, and they'd win at Crotone. And they've frittered points away at these clubs where they normally just show up, and if they're not on their game, they eke out a 1-0 or a 2-0. They're just like a relentless machine. But this season, I know it's a new coach, and I know even though he won the league, Serie was always sort of on a bit of a hiding to nothing there because of his Napoli past and how he was very sort of uncomplimentary in previous years about Juventus and the way they're favoured in fixture, how the fixtures panned out, whatever. I just don't know what's going to happen with Juventus this year. Pirlo needs time. Obviously, they can't.
Yeah.
Juventus don't sack managers mid-season at all. So he's going to be given the season, obviously, and you just sense this is the beginnings of not their empire crumbling, but just a bit of a change in Serie. It just has that feel that they're at an end of an era. They're massively dependent on Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, hugely. If he's not on his game, they struggle for goals, whereas in previous years they've had like Higuain and Dybala scoring more.
Dybala used to score.
They just don't seem to. They don't seem to have that killer instinct they had, and they're leaking silly goals, and it just feels like there's a bit of a change coming into Serie A, which is not great for Juventus, but it's absolutely fantastic for the league.
Absolutely. And I think the one player I think that they have that has the potential to lead them is Alvaro Morata at the moment, because he is getting goals in bunches. It seems like Kulusevski seems to have lost his way lately, as has Dybala. And it's just maybe them trying to figure out where they fit in this system for Pirlo. He's obviously trying to do different things here and there. He wants to play attractive football. That's what Juventus want to play. It just takes them a while. I think we talked to Juventino, just Juve not too long ago, and he's talking about how said all the players have been praising what Pirlo's been doing. It just takes time, and I think, like you said, Pirlo needs more time before this finally, hopefully, clicks in for them, that they start playing the way he wants and they start playing more beautifully. But at the moment, they're playing very stringy, resourceful. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Not necessarily pretty. It's reminding them of the days of Allegri when they used to have him. At least back then, at least they won. Now they're more drawing than not. So, certainly an interesting take by them. Obviously, we got 2 Europa League games tomorrow. 3 Europa League games tomorrow that we're not going to get into because anything can happen in those games. They're obviously in the future, and we can't predict that. So let's get over to Serie A games. I'll run through the scores really quickly, and then we'll talk about some of these games here. Starting off, the game started off with a big game, Sassuolo hosting Inter. Sassuolo obviously been one of the hot teams, one of the talked about teams this Serie A season. Seeing how they would match up against Inter, who have been very inconsistent. Well, as nobody guessed, Inter won the game 3-0. We got goals in the 4th minute by Alexis Sanchez, an own goal in the 14th minute by Kirichez, and then rounding out the goal scoring in the 60th minute, Gagliardini. Inter walk away with that win 3-0, shockingly. as you alluded to, Benevento and Juventus, they would lock up 1-1. Goals by Morata in the 21st minute, and then Letizia with a fantastic volley, goal of the week candidate in stoppage time of the first half. That would be all the goals in that game, 1-1. Atalanta, Hellas, it's two teams of a goal-scoring team and a very defensive team. Who would win that battle? Well, we saw the defensive team won that one. Hellas Verona, wonderfully done to completely negate what Atalanta do. Their goalkeeper, obviously, Silvestri, is fantastic. Goals by Veloso, a penalty in the 62nd minute. And then Zaccagni with a goal of the week candidate in the 83rd minute. 2-0 victory there. Udinese with one of the shock score lines of the weekend. 3-1 victory over Lazio. Goal scoring started for them in the 18th minute. Arcian in the 18th minute. And then Posuto in stoppage time of the first half would make it 2-0. Forestieri would get a goal of the week candidate in the 71st minute. And then Immobile would get a goal back for the host in the 74th, but it would be not enough. 3-1 there. Bologna against Crotone. The lone goal in that matchup would be a goal of the week candidate in 45th minute in stoppage time by Soriano. Bologna win that game. Entertaining game despite the low-scoring scoreline. Moving on to Milan hosting Fiorentina. 2-0 victory for Milan, and that one goals by Romagnoli and Franchesi. Cagliari Spezia, a very entertaining game. And Spezia, I don't know if you got to see this game or saw highlights of it, but Spezia with their blue jerseys. I don't know about you, but I like those jerseys a lot. What'd you make of them?
Unfortunately, I couldn't see Cagliari Spezia amongst all the games I saw last week. But are they as nice as this blue?
Yes, it was quite nice. They were very nice jerseys. I was surprised that they came out with those jerseys. It was very beautifully done.
Have a look online.
Definitely have a look at that. It was very nicely done by Spezia, but maybe they helped them with some of the goal scoring. That game ended 2-2. Goals in the 36th minute by Gyasi, a goal of the week candidate, a wonderfully assist, slaloming through all the players and then sliding it over to Gyasi. That was done by oh my god, Bastoni, excuse me. I forgot to slip my mind there. João Pedro will get a goal in the 52nd. Pavoletti with a goal of the week candidate. Back heel flick 58th. And then in stoppage time, Nzola would get a penalty 2-2 in that game. One of the games of the weekend, we thought was going to be one of the games of the weekend. Napoli hosting Roma. 4-0 victory. Obviously, this weekend was a difficult weekend for many Calcio fans and football fans all around the world with the passing of Diego Maradona. Every team paid their tribute to Maradona. Both before the game and also in the 10th minute with a stoppage and clapping and saluting for Maradona. But we all wanted to see what Napoli would do. They came out with their beautiful striped jerseys. Really, really well done by them. Very classy by them. And of course, leave it to Insigne, the captain and Napolitano, to get the goal scoring started. The 31st minute did a nice tribute to Maradona after his goal. Fabian Ruiz would make it 2-0 in 64th. Mertens in the 81st minute, and then another goal of the week candidate, Politano in the 86th. 4-0 thumping by Napoli. Emphatic statement in that game. And then the last two games of the weekend, Torino Sampdoria, very entertaining matchup. Belotti would get the goal scoring for Torino. Candreva would equal it up in the 54th. They would actually take the lead through another beautiful goal by Quagliarella. And then Miete would get a goal in the 77th to make it 2-2. And to round it all out, Parma beating Genoa. Liverani saving his job for one more week. Gervinho would get a brace. 2 goals, a goal in the 10th minute, goal in the 47th minute. They win 2-1 on the road. A lot of things to talk about in this one. Obviously, to lead all of this is obviously the passing of Diego Maradona. Very difficult. Player who meant a lot to many people. For people like you and I, we know that what we knew for Maradona was mostly through the World Cup because we didn't have really SerieA live streaming as much as other people in Europe or around the world. So at least for me, I know growing up in a South American household, we watched Diego Maradona all the time. We always watch Argentina. What were your memories of Maradona growing up in the 80s and 90s?
Well, actually, since we last spoke, I just had a thought about Maradona. I'll move on to the sec. But obviously, the 86 World Cup, Argentina, England, the famous Hand of God goal, which we still don't talk about or do. And then, obviously, this goal a couple of minutes later, that incredible run through the whole England defence. And then in that tournament, they were phenomenal. 4 years on in Italy, they actually played Italy in the semis in Naples, and it was almost like a home game for Argentina.
Yeah, it was
astonishing. It was astonishing, and then they got beaten in the final. When I was working on Football Italia, we actually had a tape, an archive tape. I don't know where we got it from, but it was in our library, and it was a tape of Maradona's highlights from when he was playing for Napoli. So we used to run in this various goals or whatever into some of our features, and some of the goals, I mean, staggering talent. I read a story by one of Maradona's teammates at Barcelona. He would, when he was unveiled at the new camp for Barcelona, he had the ball in his hand. He kicked it up so high, like higher than the stadium, and the ball came down in exactly the same spot, and he controlled it. And he did that about 5 times.
Amazing skill.
His gifts were unbelievable.
Amazing skill by him. I mean, just watching some of the warm-ups he had when he was with Napoli, it looked like he was just playing around there, but the skill set, I mean, just to do what he could do, like you said, like you mentioned, kick the ball way up high, just tap in, and I mean, the control this guy had, unreal. Obviously, one of the greatest players ever. Maybe, you know, to me, from what I've seen, he's the greatest player ever, but fantastic. And it's a great loss for not only Serie A, but, you know, for world soccer, really, and all the tributes that we saw throughout the league. None were bigger than, I think, in Napoli. Fans came out in droves outside of Italy. Oh, look, we got our hosts on here. Look at this. Frank is on. Hey, Frank. We're just reminiscing about Maradona.
Hi guys. I got yelled at by my wife for wanting to jump on the show all of a sudden. Because she said, Richard, you were doing a good job on your own without me. So I don't even. I think it's
job, to be fair.
Yeah, he is. He's doing an outstanding job. I'm questioning my existence now. So,
Frank, we were just talking about Maradona, and especially the tribute Napoli paid for them, and the fans that came out at the side of the stadium. Obviously, what Insigne and the club did for them. What'd you take from this? Obviously, it's a difficult loss with Maradona. What'd you get from this weekend?
I think that, you know, what everybody did in the league was tasteful. And appropriate. You know, everything from, you know, the minute silence, the black armbands, the time to stop the match in the 10th minute for the applause, you know, the tribute that Napoli paid in particular. I think that all of it was absolutely appropriate for an icon, you know, of all of world football, you know, in particular the Italian game, when you consider, you know, what he meant to Napoli.
Yeah.
He basically, I mean, what he did for Napoli will go down in folklore, and has gone down in folklore, to go to Napoli and win 2 titles. And it's just the impact. The thing about Napoli is it's not just about the club. It's the pride in their city in the south, you know, not the most affluent of places. And it's all about them. And they're all obsessed by football, obsessed by Napoli. And they're definitely among the most passionate fan bases in the whole of Italy. And to have someone come in from overseas, play for them, win them 2 titles from nowhere, to do that, you know, hero.
I saw a comment online over the weekend how they said, you know, Messi and Ronaldo, they just want to go to winners and prove themselves amongst winners for a challenge. And Maradona went to Napoli when they weren't even considered a favorites, and they took them from really nothing and make them this great team. Won 2 Scudetti, like you mentioned. Really fantastic stuff by them. Yeah, it's just really wonderfully done. And I think, you know, let's talk about the game, Napoli against Roma, a game where 2 teams who were very good. You know, we talked about how Roma had a pretty good run. What did they win, 5 or 6 games, something like that? You know, heading into this one, Napoli's obviously very talented, missing Osimhen, but they're still very both teams. Their midfields are wonderful. They're possession based, create a lot of opportunities. I thought going into this game, this would be a great test to see how good Roma really was. We knew Napoli because they already had some tests early in the season, how that they were a legit team. Roma still had. They had a couple games under their belt, but really we weren't anything proven yet, and this would have been a great opportunity. However, they came up to that immovable force, not only Napoli, but the whole aura of Diego Maradona, and Napoli really want to play for him. I think that became a a mountain too high to climb. What did you make with Jonathan, with the way Napoli just dismantled Roma in this game, 4-0 scoreline?
It was hugely impressive. I mean, I'm a bit of a traditionalist, and I think sometimes things are meant to be, and there was no way Roma were going to win that match, no matter what run of form they've been on. But the way Napoli took them apart, and it was a real statement victory. That it wasn't just paying tribute to Maradona and they won the game. They put Roma to the sword. Scored 4 goals. Not many teams are going to score 4 against Roma this season, and they were Napoli on their day are breathtaking. And when they were going, there's a very strong arm saying when they were going head to head 2 years ago with Juventus for the title, Napoli played the better football. Yep. Juventus were the consistent machine, correct, but Napoli played the better football.
Absolutely. They were really the first offensive team around. And, the last few years, obviously you got teams like Atalanta, Sassuolo, and some other teams that, play more attractive style football. But Napoli were really the ones who kind of began this whole movement of playing beautiful football, and really no one's matched their style. Atalanta at times does match it, obviously last year and so. But Frank, 4 goals. We had 2 goal of the week candidates. Obviously, Insigne with a wonderful free kick goal to start it off and paying a tribute to Maradona. And then Politano, his goal at the end, just slaloming through a la Maradona, going through like 4 or 5 guys to get that goal. It wasn't just one person. It was a team effort in this one. They obviously all were playing for number 10. And it showed in their game when even if they don't have all their best players, they're still hard to beat.
I think the occasion, to kind of piggyback what John said, the occasion was going to be too big for Roma because of what Maradona meant to Napoli, and Napoli owed, what's the best way to pay respect to an icon of your club? Put on a performance that's
suited for
fitting of his legend, and that's exactly what we saw from Napoli here. I mean, they scored 4. There's, I think, and I'm trying to remember the chances exactly, there's at least 2 or 3 that they should have scored and didn't. And this could have been worse. Yeah. So 4-0 flattered Roma. And then I think that, in the background, I thought that Napoli had the advantage in this going in with, both of them having to play 3 days before in the Europa League, but Napoli having the comfort of being able to play at home against Rijeka, being able to rotate and rest some players, where Roma had to travel to Romania to play Cluj, and now all of a sudden you pack your bags. Now you got to go to Napoli and play, in the Derby della Sud. And by the way, you get to play them, right after Maradona died. So good luck to you. I thought that, Roma's begging to be tagged. And John, you're right. Roma will not give up 4 goals often this season, but they'll also, not have a makeshift back 3 where they're asking Brian Cristante to deputize as part of a back 3. Where they're going to have guys like Smalling, available, where he's obviously a little bit more of an enforcer. And I'm not saying his presence would not have mattered in this game. I think Napoli was convincing enough that you could have put Nesta back there, and it was going to be a problem. It was just a convincing performance from Napoli. There's not much more you need to say than that.
Yeah. So talk about another game that I thought was big. Inter. Let's go back to the Inter Sassuolo matchup. That game, where it was, everyone wanted to see, because obviously Sassuolo have been playing beautiful football this year so far. Inter have been very inconsistent, so most people thought that Sassuolo had a very good chance of winning this game. If nothing else, it had been a draw. What we saw was a very opportunistic Inter side, John. Despite their inconsistencies this season, despite all their fans calling for Conte's head this season, a little prematurely. Oh, by the way, they're up there in the table, not too far behind Milan. They found a way to get 3 goals in this game. They figured it out in this one. It was a game that they needed to show up, and they showed up.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know what to read into Inter this year. I mean, Sassuolo started so well. It's bizarre, but Inter can do that. They've got so much talent in their squad. I mean, they've got so much firepower. Lukaku looks like a man possessed this season. And Inter are just, if I was an Inter fan, I'd be so frustrated, because the game against Torino was sort of a microcosm of their season. Go 2-0 down in the game. you should win comfortably, and then suddenly turn it on. They've done that a few times this year. They've gone behind, especially at the San Siro, and they've turned it round within minutes. There was another game, off the top of my head, I can't remember who it was, but they've had this poor campaign in Europe, but at the end of it all, they're right on Milan's coattails, and they could easily get to the round of 16 of the Champions League. So if that happens, why is he under pressure?
Yeah, it's Interisi. I mean, it's like Milan. It's something about the Milan water that all their fans are just crazy no matter what, whether they're doing well or not. It's just going to be rabid fans. Frank, what'd you make of Inter's performance, or even more importantly, what'd you make of Sassuolo's lack of showing up in this game?
I think it's harsh on Sassuolo. I actually thought they played pretty well.
Yeah.
I thought they played their game. I thought they had the lion's share of the possession, which is what they want. They had their
Handanovic
chances.
was good. Handanovic is good in this game.
But Sassuolo only put 3 on target. And Handanovic, I think there was one where he was troubled, but the other 2 were comfortable or something, like just trying to remember what, those sequences of chances were, but there wasn't really a departure from what Sassuolo did. Inter was opportunistic. They let Sassuolo have the ball for longer periods of time, and hit them on the break, which is what I think is Inter's best way of playing.
I agree.
When you can, and in this game they had Lautaro and Alexis up front, but when you have Lukaku in the game and he can be a big target and he's the first guy you can get the ball out to and he can absorb punishment and hold the ball, and then you've got guys that can just whip around him or show for him from the midfield, whether it's Barella, whether it's I'm not going to say Eriksson because he seems frozen out, and then guys going through like Hakimi. They're built to counterattack. So the situation set up well for them. And like I said, I don't think Sassuolo were necessarily poor. I just think it was a 3-0 game where Inter were opportunistic, took advantage of the chances. Inter played the game they wanted to play, and they played their game better than Sassuolo played their game, and that's what it came down to.
Sorry, I just wanted to come in. What you said about Inter's counter-attacking style was exemplified against Mönchengladbach last night.
Yeah,
in that
absolutely.
Lukaku with the 2 goals on the counter-attack, and they got the pace in the side. They got the strength of Lukaku. They are designed to play that way, and maybe playing away suits them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, less pressure, it seems like. And I think you mentioned it. Lukaku is just having a wonderful year so far. I mean, obviously losing the weight obviously helped a lot, but his confidence is through the roof at the moment. I mean, we've heard all those, in the past how he's not a big game player, and I disagree now with Inter. He's become a big game player for them. Obviously, with the brace against Gladbach, it's turned up in Serie A. He's going to be one of the best leading goal scorers this year. He's really transformed into this leader on this team, someone that they can build upon. And when the times get rough, he bullies his way to get that goal, to get that team to move on to the next level. And he's an important player for them, whether, mostly in Champions League now, not necessarily in this game against Sassuolo, but a huge player for them.
Inter third best away form in Serie A to start the season. They've played 5, they've won 3, they've drawn twice, and have only conceded 4 times. Versus when they're at home, it's a different animal. They've won 2, drawn 1, and lost 1, and all of those games are an adventure. 11 goals for and 9 goals against. So they seem to have it a lot. To your point, John, they seem to have it a lot more under control when they're on the road because they can play the game that best suits them.
Yeah, and they can't even blame the fans putting them under pressure this year. No, I mean they look very strong. I saw their game last night, and they must madden their supporters because they were cruising in that game, and then Mönchengladbach get a goal back, and then it's panic stations. They do seem mentally to be quite brittle. They don't have that incredible mental strength you label maybe that the great Juventus sides we've seen. They are susceptible to conceding. But the thing I want to say about Lukaku is you get strikers in whatever game you watch, you get strikers who look good. But Lukaku, I think, is one of those strikers that when he gets a chance, he just doesn't look like missing. He very rarely wastes a one-on-one. He's so clinical, and I think he's perfect for Inter away from home with their counter-attacking style, and that he can get a chance, he'll finish it for you.
Yeah.
I think Interisi just need to calm down. You're second in the table. Second. Well, you're 5 points behind Milan, but you're second place. So calm down. Get off the ledge. You're fine. Relax. Okay. Could be worse. You could be having Liverani as your manager. Just saying. Speaking of inconsistent teams, let's jump over to Juventus against Benevento. A game that, like we talked about earlier, most seasons they would have this game bagged and wrapped and off to the next game. No, they struggled in this game. Obviously, a wonderful goal by Letizia in stoppage time of the first half, but they really couldn't break him down. Obviously, the goalkeeping had something to do with it, but Juventus were put under pressure, a lot of pressure by Benevento. Szczesny had to come up with some big saves at this game. What are you making of this? I guess the new romance frailties, under Pirlo so far, that they seem to can't get it right. I mean, they're so super dependent on Ronaldo, as you mentioned. So when he's not there, even when he is there, it's still a hard time for them.
It's evident that Ronaldo is carrying the team at the moment. I mean, it is evident. Juventus in previous seasons will go to Benevento, keep a clean sheet, win 2-0. They beat Verona at home comfortably, and they're dropping points. As I said to you earlier, it does feel like the beginning of a change in Serie. It just has. They don't have that aura of invincibility anymore. Their best players. I mean, Ronaldo's obviously scoring goals left, right, and centre, but Dybala's not playing as well as he can. There's not goals coming from elsewhere in the team. Their sort of strength in the Chiellini-Bonucci partnership, they've been out injured. It seems very stop-start. And the cynical view in Europe, you hear this one out, there's a definite school of thought that says Pirlo is a stopgap until they can get a big name.
Yeah.
And the thing about appointing Pirlo is he will get time because he's an absolute favorite of the fans.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Frank, Benevento faced a lot of shots, or they gave a lot of shots to Juventus. I think they had something like 9 shots in the game, 4 on target. It wasn't like Szczesny didn't have any work to do. He had lots of work to do in this game. Is this more credit to Benevento just sticking to their game plan, Inzaghi finding a way for their guys to just push the right buttons, or is this Juventus still working through their growing pains?
A little bit of both. And I look at when I look at Benevento's numbers here, I mean, they got outpossessed, and clearly Juve came out and played the way Pirlo seems to want them to play.
Yeah.
On another day, Juve win this game. All you have to do is look at the statistics with what happened here. But I think that, you say growing pains, I still believe that this is a work in progress, this Juventus. Yeah. And whoever would have come in, you're working in new midfielders, you're working in new players here and there. At some point, that's got to stop being an excuse.
Yeah.
But you're also deputizing fullbacks as center backs, just like, where Roma played Cristante as a center back and, when he's a midfielder. So, so I think that you're with all of this influx of talent, I think they're still trying to find the right mix. They're still trying to find the right rotation. And let's not forget, they're playing every 3 days regularly. All of these teams, all of these top teams are, and they're being asked to figure it out. Easier to do when you've got a team that is cohesive and has played together, and there hasn't been a whole lot of change to them, like a Milan. Mm-hmm. Okay. A lot more challenging for a Juve, which is working in different players, for an Inter that's working in different players. Okay, Napoli, there's not a whole lot that changed to them. They added a dynamic center forward who's now hurt. So easy for them to go back to what they were doing before he arrived, Osimhen. The team that I do think surprises me, that should be a little bit of an as you were, with having to play every 3 days and having the players and they've got a decent enough rotation as Atalanta. Yeah. You would think that having to play this hectic schedule would suit them because there's not so many players that they would have had to have worked in. Yeah, they've got Romero playing in back. Alexei Miranchuk has not played much. They're they're working in some guys in the midfield where they're having some issues, but there's not too much of a departure. So that one's maybe an outlier from where my thoughts are on this. And I think that, the rigors of trying to get off to the right start in league and then also trying to qualify in the Champions League and get on to the next stage while working in a whole bunch of new players, that's a whole set of challenges. And that's a lot to ask a first-time manager at a high level.
Yeah, I agree about that. It's a difficult task for anyone, especially a first-time manager like you said with Andrea Pirlo. Any closing thoughts on Juventus, Jonathan, before we talk about our last topic of Calcio here?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I think things are going to change in the new year. I think when Champions League after next week, when that stops, then they will get more breaks. And I think that's going to be interesting when we're in that stage as to how Juventus perform on a weekly basis. They've got a huge game coming up at the weekend in the derby with Torino. I mean, a huge game.
Yep.
And they can't drop points in that one, but they have been dropping points at home, which is very un-Juventus-like. So that's no matter what the story is, Juventus Torino is always a huge occasion, even with no fans. So I think they've really got to send a message this weekend, this Saturday, that they are very much in with a shout this year, and they're not going away.
Yeah, I think once the game starts slowing up and you go back to once a week or whatever, the two teams are going to benefit the most, I think, are Juventus and Inter. We know Conte is an excellent manager when he has a week to prepare for a matchup, and these short rests are very hard for him. And obviously, the team is inconsistent that's what happens.
I think you're going to see this final group game between Barcelona and Juventus as pretty much a glorified training session between a bunch of youth. There's no way Messi and Ronaldo will be going out there when they finish first, they finish second. It's been proven in recent years. Yeah. You can get a better draw finishing second sometimes than finishing top of the group. I think it's just a routine match, and they're both through, and there's no way the big players will be risked. It's not going to be a Messi against Ronaldo next week.
No, I don't think so. The last team I want to talk about is obviously the resurgence of Milan. They're in first place. They now have a 5-point lead, 2-0 win against Fiorentina. They had 2 penalties in this game, one converted by Kessie, the other one not converted. I think it was the first penalty, well, obviously legit. I thought the second one was little 50-50 on that one, and I think it was deserved saved in that one. Dragowski did a great to anticipate it. I have always been not a fan of the slow run-ups to the kicks. But I think Milan, what we've seen is that they're finding ways to win no matter what, whether they have their best player, Zlatan, or they don't. They're not as dependent on him as they were maybe at the beginning of this run. They're got a lot of contributions. Salamakers is really showing up. Obviously, they're still led by Kjaer. Romagnoli had one of his best games in a long time. The team is really playing well right now, and they're looking like a team that could possibly challenge for the Scudetto. It's still early, but right now they got a 5-point lead. We're in December now. It's Jonathan, it's nice to see for Serie A to have another big club back in the limelight for now, at least momentarily, at least. What do you call this?
They're on an unbelievable run. It's 24 matches, is it?
Yeah.
It's sort of heading back towards Fabio Capello.
Exactly.
But they got an advantage. They've not got. I mean, they're in the Europa League, aren't they?
Yep, Europa League,
yeah. So that's obviously European football, but it's not where they want to be in Europe. Right, so they've got a really good shout this year. The thing about Milan is, in recent years, they haven't reacted, in my opinion, so well to setbacks. And this year, they've been up against it. They've had Ibrahimovic out with COVID. They haven't had the coach there with COVID. And they've just got on with it. And they've shown a very impressive sort of inner strength, if you like. This looks like a Milan side that has every chance of going all the way this year. There's going to be twists. There's going to be turns. You're going to see Juventus have a spell. You're going to see Inter have a spell. But at the end of the day, I think it'll be between those three. But Milan have got as good a shout as they've had in years to get a title.
Frank, we were just on the Calcio Connection pod, and we talked about how teams that have these long unbeaten runs when they lose, and at that point they had lost to Lille 3-0, that often sends up another reaction of consecutive losses after that. Milan, they bounced back after that and continued winning again. They found their undefeated form again in Serie A, and then they went back to Lille and got a draw on that one. The mental toughness is there, Frank. It seems like in the past when they would have lost like they did, they would continue losing on. Then now they found that strength to kind of figure a way to win, to continue winning, even if they don't have Zlatan.
And you attribute that to having a player like Zlatan Ibrahimovic in your ranks, who's a champion who has won everywhere. You attribute that to Simon Kjaer, who is a veteran presence in that dressing room. Okay, and I think, and you're seeing now these younger players growing up too. Romagnoli is a veteran. Gianluigi Donnarumma, as young as he is, he's a veteran. He's been
200
in goal
appearances.
for Milan.
My goodness.
Yeah, since he was 16 years old. It's astonishing. So you're starting to see these guys come of age. You're starting to see Frank Kessie. Has he been outplayed yet in midfield? In any of these games, and what he means and the role that he's taken on. So I think a lot of that has happened too. You're starting to see these players start to learn from these experiences and learn from these mistakes. Now, after a 3-0 loss to Lille, if this would have been the Milan of 2 years ago, yeah, you would have seen a run of about 5 or 6 disappointing results after that. You just didn't have, the mentality or the veteran presence in that dressing room. You didn't have that guy that you could look at that would look at everybody and say, hey, we're going to be fine. Let's write this one off. Let's get on to the next game, because the next opponent isn't going to feel sorry for us. So there's a mental strength to this Milan team, and evident that, no Ibra against Fiorentina, maybe they struggle. Well, they were, they looked very comfortable in their performance. I watched the match. Fiorentina didn't look that dangerous. They had moments, but nothing
Vlahovic
significant.
had a good shot, and that was about it. Really.
Yeah, they had moments, but it was just like it. And so it astonishes you to an extent to see this Milan team start to come of age, and it's the combination of that veteran presence to just kind of hold these young players' hands a little bit. And now the young players have figured that out, and they're out there doing it themselves, and now they're becoming leaders, within their roles.
Jonathan, I don't think with obviously the work that Zlatan and Chiara are doing with their mentoring, I don't think Pioli nor Lord Bonera are getting enough credit for what they've been doing with the team, especially Pioli. Obviously in the past we've seen what he's done with other teams, and it's been a struggle. He's been a mid-table coach. Since he's been with Milan, he seems to have found it, especially when the whole rumor started about possibly him leaving, Rania coming in. Ever since then, I mean, it's taken to another level, and his coaching, his managing has been excellent. I think it's not enough credit's been going to him through this long run for him.
I think this Milan run has sort of, because it's gone over since lockdown and since the leagues was suspended last year, it's sort of been spread over that time, and it's not like it's all happened this year. And I think it's sort of, they've almost gone under the radar in a way, and they're up there. People haven't necessarily seen the results they've been getting, and the resurgence, when you look at the stats, is unbelievable from years gone by. I mean, they've gone from a side that has been, in a way, similar to Inter, maddeningly inconsistent. I mean, like you saw in the derby last year, they were 2-0 up at half time and lost 4-2.
Yeah.
That the mental strength, they're streets away from that now. Yeah. That Milan side of last year is not the Milan side of this year. No. They're very well drilled. They're very organized. They got a great work ethic. They're a team, and they just seem to have a steely resolve about them. Yeah,
and I think what we've seen is this is a very young team as well. They may not win this year, but they're built for a long-term success. And you got to give Pioli credit for not pushing the buttons, but not over stressing them. Obviously, having Zlatan there and Chiara to really take all the pressure, all the outside pressure away from the guys. It's going a long way, and what you're seeing is a young team growing up before our eyes. And before we know, we may have a team that's going to be challenging for Scudettis many years to come. It's really fun to watch. Maybe more so for Frank and I because we're Milanisti. But it's still, for Serie A, who's had Juventus dominate the league for 10 years. It's nice to see another team emerge. Obviously, you got Inter's obviously in the mix as well. Atalanta, they're the X factor here, and Napoli now on the outside. They're a really fun, dangerous team. We may have a race this year potentially at the end. It's still too early to tell. Many people are still picking Juve to run away with it, and it could. But at the moment, it looks like it's anybody's league, and there's so many different stories that we can follow along, Frank, to see who's going to win. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would love. I'm going to remain pragmatic about my expectations of Milan, and I'm going to say top 4 is still the goal. Because every club has their peaks and valleys. This peak that Milan has been on has been going for a very, very long time. And I'm a reasonable man. This will end at some point. They will have a dip in form. They will fall.
Zlatan's 39.
Yeah, sure. So, can they control the damage when that happens and work their way back up? Have they matured to the point where they can do that? I think would be what we'd, would be the question that we would ask. If we win the title, great. I get in this argument with Stevie from Milan Weekly Pod all the time. He wants to win the Scudetto every year. And I said, you know what? I said, I can live with 4th this year, but I won't live with 4th every year. I'll live with 4th as a springboard to getting back to winning titles.
We don't want to be Arsenal. No offense if you're an Arsenal fan.
Right.
I'm not.
Okay, good.
I'm going to come back to that slow penalty routine in a minute. You'll love this, but
okay.
I'll tell you in a sec. Back to Milan. I think it's all about getting back into the top table and being in the Champions League next year.
Yeah.
It's small steps. I mean, where they are is fantastic, but it's a big jump to go from where they were to winning the league. And it's about getting big nights at the Serie Champions League nights. That's what they've got to get back to. And top 4's, well, now it's massively realistic. But this season is an unusual season, like no other. Yeah. This season, we are in December now, and you're normally heading towards halfway through the season, and we're nowhere near halfway through the season. No. And you think at Christmas we've got an idea, but it's week 10 this week, I think. And there's 28 games to go. It's crazy. It's going to be. I tell you what, next year when you've got all these kind of squeeze in all these midweek rounds, because we've got the Euros next summer, you got the Champions League. When things for teams like Juventus, it'll probably do them a favor if they want to win the league, getting out of Europe, because it's just mad. There's going to be so many games. They'll struggle to get them all in. I just don't see how it's going to work, because these seasons have to be done by middle of May latest.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Winners and losers this weekend, Frank. I'll start with you. Who are your winners? Who are your losers? I'll go first, really, if you want. For me, obviously, the winners of the weekend are going to be Napoli. Obviously, paying tribute to Diego Maradona. Emphatic win, 4-0. Wonderful for them. Losers of the week, man. That's this game is going to be my shot for the best. But Atalanta, a big game against Hellas Verona, and Hellas really clamped down on them defensively. They really had no answers. Silvestri's been amazing. We've talked about it for a long time, how great of a goalkeeper he is. He stood up in this game, and again, not finding a way to win in a big game for them. Maybe not a must-win game, but it was certainly a game they needed to get some points out of, and they failed to do that. So they're my losers of the weekend, Atalanta. Frank, what about you?
I'm with you on the Atalanta shout. I found it interesting, and we're going to have to watch Atalanta here over the next collection of games. That it sounds like Papu Gomez wasn't cooperating with Gasperini on Tuesday, and that's why he was yanked at halftime, which potentially damaged all of my DraftKings lineups, because I had him and Zapata in every lineup. So helpful that I had Payet and I had Porto's goalie, who made a metric boatload of saves, against Manchester City and got a clean sheet. But that's going to be something to watch. Is there a little bit of a rift there between Gomez and Gasperini, and how does that affect the rest of the team, and how does that in turn affect Atalanta? So I think they're the losers there, and I can't get past. I'm with you. I'm Napoli as a winner, but I'm also going to give a shot to Inter. That was a much needed response after what was an absolute calamity last week in the Champions League against Real Madrid. Getting exactly what they pay for when they bought Arturo Vidal, and then regrouping and being able to come back and beat a Sassuolo team that this was their test. This was their have we arrived, and are we for real, and are we going to be a problem for everybody? And Inter carried out their game plan and showed that they weren't. So I'll go with Inter, but sentimentally Napoli, considering their performance and considering how they did.
Yeah. John, if you had to pick winners and losers of this weekend, who would you pick?
Well, I've obviously got to pick someone different now. I've got to come think of someone else.
Yeah.
I don't. Any other week, I try and think of someone else, but Napoli. But the whole motion of it, and they're obviously the winners of the week. But the only sad thing really was that there were no fans there to pay tribute, because it would have been the Derby of the South, packed stadium. That's the real shame of all this. The losers this week, I am going to go for Lazio, and it brings me on to another point which I would love to make, if that's all right.
Please do.
And that is teams that are struggling for league form that are dominating Europe.
Yeah.
Lazio, Juventus, Barcelona mid-table, and they won 5 out of 5. There's teams that are having a very stuttering time of it in their domestic leagues, but in Europe they're flying. And Juventus and Lazio are two cases in point. They've to get 4 points against Dortmund there, and Haaland scoring goals left, right, and centre. They've really all but there in the knockout stages, and it's really interesting that there are these teams that seem to be struggling domestically but cruising in Europe.
Yeah, and another team is Gladbach in Germany. They're like seventh in the table right now, but they're leading their group. Usually we've seen in the past, at least with the Italian teams, the opposite, where they do really well in Serie A and then they go to Europe, like Atalanta last year at the beginning at least, and other teams in the past, where they struggled mightily in Europe. And Lazio has been also a culprit of this in Europa League last year. They did really well in the season last year, obviously going toe-to-toe with Juventus, and then really capitulating in Europa League. So it's funny how that happens sometimes, but hey, sometimes people that, the good teams will get up for the big games. We used to see in the mid 2000s, Milan always doing okay in the league. They go to the Champions League, they're just dominating everybody, and they're winning, and winning the Champions League trophies and stuff. So, good shot, Frank. Jonathan, you mentioned something about the slow run ups with the penalty kicks before we move on.
Well,
touch on that.
I have to bring this one up. You might have to YouTube this. For my sins, I have a family curse inflicted upon me, which is to follow Charlton Athletic. And obviously we had a routine 1-0 home defeat tonight, which is fairly standard. But we had a player playing for us called Lyle Taylor, who had the most unbelievable penalty routine. He literally would start on the edge of the box and literally trot. And just place it in the corner. And just look him up. Just look up Lyle Taylor, Lyle.
I'm looking at this now.
Penalty. It's phenomenal. Anyway, he played for us for Charlton, and you'll see when you look at it what his routine's like. It's phenomenal.
Well, Frank's looking at that. We usually pick our top 5 goals of the week, and as a guest, we'll give you time. We're going to go first to hear ours, and you don't have to pick a top 5. You can pick your favorite goal of the weekend. I'll go first, Frank, if you don't mind. My top 5. First, my honorable mention is going to be Quagliarella with his volley. I thought it was a nice goal by him. Coming in at number 5, Pavoletti with his nice back heel flick in the loss in his game. Coming number 4, Forestieri for Udinese. Nice volley. Nice to get the nice control off the chest and then volleying off of that. Short side on the keeper. Number 3 is actually going to be Ghiassi's goal. It was actually Bastoni doing a nice slalom run on the left-hand side, going past all like 3 or 4 defenders, and then finally crossing it into Ghiassi. So more for the assist in that one. Number 2, Insigne's free kick. Wonderful free kick. I mean, what more can you say? It's a beautiful shot. only to be outdone by another Maradona-esque type goal. I'm giving number 1 to Matteo Politano. Just a wonderful goal, beating 5 players, including the goalkeeper in that one. That was my number 1 goal of the week. Frank, what is your top 5? Do you have a top 5?
I have a 1,
Okay.
and I have Insigne's free kick,
Okay.
and going and getting the Maradona jersey. I think that captures the whole weekend, and I think that's the symbol that we should be left with from this past weekend in Serie A.
Absolutely.
And that's a very disrespectful penalty, by the way.
It's unreal,
Lyle
isn't it?
Taylor.
It's unreal. Every single one, though. And
Who's the Irish
every
UFC
time.
fighter? Who's the Irish UFC fighter again? What's his name?
McGregor? Conor McGregor?
All he needs to do is walk like McGregor, the strut that he does after he wins. So if he does that, walking up to a ball in a penalty.
Well, the thing about Lyle Taylor, and I'll tell you about my top goal in a moment, but the thing about Lyle Taylor, which we've never forgiven him for, was he was out of contract last summer, and we've got a new owner now, but the old owners were disastrous and there was no money, blah blah. And when they came back after lockdown, he refused to play for us. He was like best goal scorer in the team by a mile, and we got relegated in injury time on the last day. So there you go. We're not fans of Lyle Taylor anymore. He's sort of you love him or you hate him. He's that kind of player. But my favourite goal of the week, you stole my thunder. Yeah, it's got to be Insigne. I think you can only look at one goal. It wasn't technically the greatest free kick you'll ever see, but it's more about what it meant and the reaction and everything. And it showed it was football in its purest form. Free kick, wonderful celebration, respect, and just it had everything, that goal. And it's what I'll take away from last week more than anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with both you guys there. Obviously, the moment was huge, and he stepped up. And I mean, he's a perfect person to score that first goal for Napoli, no doubt about that. So, John, before we let you go, we have to christen you with America's favorite game and the world's favorite game. Who won Calcio Twitter? We got some interesting ones this weekend. Some that we'll probably run right through, but you're gonna help us pick a winner in this one. We're gonna start out, Frank. I'll start out with the first one. It comes from our friends at the Rete This Way, a Calcio podcast. That's at Rete This Way. It says, Parma have won their Coppa Italia match against Cosenza, much to the dismay of Cosenza team president Eugenio Guarascio, who is also yet to catch Sonic the Hedgehog. Look at that haircut. My goodness.
Little problem with the hair there, huh?
Yeah.
So,
all right. Your buddy Dave is the next one.
Yeah, is Dave going to go back-to-back at Forza Inter Haiti? Bobby Gaggs owed us a good performance today after his nightmare miss last time we played Sassuolo, but outside of the boot bottom corner finish, sheesh, that was filthy. I just for calling him Bobby Gaggs, I had no idea that was going on in reference to Roberto Gagliardini. And the reason why this is funny and the reason why this is nominated is because Bobby Gaggs is just such an appropriate name for him.
Yeah, it is. It is. Because he gags all the time and misses open nets. We'll stick it on Gagliardini because you mentioned you didn't realize it was International Palan Gagliardini Day. This comes from our friend Alex Dono from Calcio Connection podcast, excuse me. He says, up to this point, his entire highlight reel consisted of goals against Genoa. So it's nice to see him branching out. That was a response to your tweet, Frank.
Yeah.
Wonderfully done. Let's see. El Presidente has one, huh?
He decided to nominate himself, huh?
Yeah.
Let me just hold on a second. I just lost my train of thought here.
Would you like me to take the Italian?
Let's see. No, I will do this.
Okay.
Pirlo saying, quote, abbiamo davanti... What's the Italian word for 10?
10.
10, yes. Abbiamo davanti 10 partite che dobbiamo giocare come se fossero tutti finali, which means we have 10 games ahead that we must play as if they were all finals. Off to a good start as per the plan. So Presidente nominating himself, nobody does that. Nobody does that around here. What are you talking about? People nominate me.
Next one is from Adriano pointed us in the right direction here to Kareem. It's at football_Kareem. He says Andrea Pirlo without Ronaldo. It looks like Agnelli. It's a mix of Agnelli and him.
You could almost say that's Giampaolo too.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was like, that looks like Giampaolo.
Let's see. All right, Milan Club Philly provided a nomination at Diavolo 816. Bonero's vest deserves a place in Casa Milan. It actually does.
It does, yeah. They're doing very well.
I have a vest like that. I do.
Do you?
Yeah.
This next one comes from at Che Guevara. It's at CHEGIAEVARA, and it says, if 2020 was a picture, Nicholas Bentner and Nicholas Anelka looking like, what the hell are we doing here? Oh, Lord Bentner. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Next one, we're gonna skip this next one because I think it's a little distasteful considering the situation. Any other time of year have been fine, but
and that is excuse me, this is at Sampdorista. Inter won and they moved from the 4th place to the 4th place. Grandpa opening up a Christmas present and seeing he's got the same shirt that he wore. Did you ever steal your dad's tools and then get it for him as a present?
No, I haven't done that. No.
Some comedian talked about that years and years ago, and I actually nearly pulled that off.
Well, gentlemen, those were our picks. You got a winner out of these? I'm gonna go with the hedgehog one right here. I think that's funny to me, the hairstyle.
I'm with you. That was a great shout. Rete this way, I think, is a winner. But let's leave it up to John. John can pick the winner.
Oh, hedgehog all day long.
Hedgehog all day long. All right.
Gotta be the hedgehog.
Yeah.
All right.
Gotta be. That's fantastic.
That's from Rete this way. Our friends over there.
Retweeting it now.
Wonderful.
Congratulations at Rete
this way. Yeah. Well, Frank, you're back. Do you want to do our wonderful closing and sign off our guests, or would you like me to do it?
You've been rocking it. Close us out, man.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Jonathan Grade, for joining us tonight, talking about your book. Please, again, tell us about the title of the book, where they can find it, when our listeners and followers can find you.
It's called GOLAZZO, The Football Italia Years. It's on Amazon. It's on Kindle Store. It's a very good Christmas present. I heartily recommend it, even though I'm very unbiased in these matters. But yeah, get it on Amazon or Kindle Store. It's £9.99 on Amazon, $7.99 the Kindle Store, which is probably something very similar in dollars. And it's a nostalgic trip down memory lane. That's the best way I can describe it. Any fan of Italian football in the 90s will be all over it.
Beautifully welcome. Well, thank you very much. That's beautiful. Like I said, I got my book. I'm in the middle of reading it. I'm enjoying it. Please go out there and give that a read. It's excellent stuff. You'll not be disappointed with that. Frank, your turn to plug away.
I'm at FTC_21. I gotta get used to this camera reflection on Twitter. And I will again be on Man of the Match with Alex Donald on Friday at 2:00 Eastern to talk about all things Serie A with Alex on Onside Radio. That is at Onside Radio. So check all that out. About 15 minutes. But Alex does great work down there on the Miami sports scene and does great work as well with Jerry over there at Calcio Connection.
Beautifully well, very, very well done. Definitely give it a listen. It's definitely a good listen for sure, and it's a nice short take with you and Alex. We're always hooking up a Calcio Connection now. We just might as well just merge the pods here eventually. As always, you can follow me at R_KHARMAN everywhere here, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. But please make sure you follow the podcast on here. If you're on YouTube, make sure you follow, like, leave comments. You can follow us on SoundCloud, anywhere that streams music, Apple Podcasts, you name it, iHeartRadio, we are there. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at SerieA Sitdown. And as always, make sure you tell your paisans about us. Ciao.